Well, what the report highlights is the strength of our ability to respond to the pandemic across the UK. It confirms a further £14.5 billion of funding for Scotland, 8.6 billion for Wales and 5 billion for Northern Ireland. And of course that is in addition to the measures we've been able to take across the UK, such as the furlough, the self-employed income support scheme, the CBILS, bounce back loans, the grants and so forth.
So sorry, just to pick up on the last bit of that question, what's it going to look like next year?
Well, the Treasury's response will reflect the pandemic and the path of the virus. Clearly through the roadmap and the vaccination programme, that is the route to bouncing back across the UK and getting back to normal. And obviously the support will be commensurate with the pressures that come from the pandemic.
The other day, the Welsh Economy Minister Vaughan Gething said that it was deeply troubling that Welsh business support, funding, services critical to their COVID response faced threats from UK government plans to make decisions on post-EU funding. Do you accept that your plans to essentially allocate small pots of cash to local authorities for things like regenerating high streets will take away money from critical Welsh Government services and budgets, things like Job Growth Wales, helping young unemployed people, things like Prime Cymru, helping over 50s get it back into work? Do you accept that your plans are taking funds away from things like that?
No, and the Welsh Secretary had a meeting with the CBI in Wales just this week where he was talking about the levelling up opportunities we have across the United Kingdom, including the support that we'll offer to businesses in Wales. There's much closer working now between the UK government and local authorities across Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, much more so than in the past. And actually what the announcement today shows is the strength of that support, that 8.6 billion in addition to the usual funding that goes to the Welsh Government, over which Welsh ministers themselves have discretion.
But 50% of Jobs Growth Wales was EU funded, 50% of Prime Cymru EU funded as well. What evidence do you have that these pots of cash for local authorities strategically are going to create jobs in the long run, boost the Welsh economy? Because that's what levelling up is really about, isn't it? It's not just about kind of nice to haves on the high street, it's about actually changing the economy.
Well, we have the UK SPF scheme itself, which will be piloted this year in terms of the support that we will then roll out at the spending review. But the point is we're able to design this in a bespoke way to meet the specific needs of Welsh businesses, the Welsh economy and the UK as a whole. We have much more control over the schemes that we design, so they're better tailored to the needs of the Welsh people. That is the opportunity that Brexit unlocks.
They're much more local, aren't they? They're not kind of Wales-wide schemes like Jobs Growth Wales. So what evidence is there that that smaller localised approach actually is going to improve the Welsh economy rather than a strategic Wales-wide scheme like the ones I've mentioned already?
Well, there's a number. I mean, in fact, one of the issues raised with me by a number of the Welsh MPs is how often, for example, in North Wales, it's important that schemes look across the border, because obviously there's a big interaction between North Wales and schemes the other side of the border, and that's one of the opportunities that we have. So it's about designing schemes in the way that work best for the areas that we're supporting, taking a more bespoke approach.
And just finally, I wanted to ask about the MP Rob Roberts, who has been suspended from the House of Commons for sexual harassment. He's due back in 2 weeks today. I understand that UK ministers have no plans to table any kind of motion of expulsion for the MP. Do you agree with your colleague, the Housing and Community Secretary, your other colleague, the Leader of the House of Commons, that he should resign? Or do you think that the UK government should be trying to push for a way to stop him returning to the House of Commons in 2 weeks?
Well, these are clearly very serious matters. Mr Roberts is no longer a Conservative MP. The whip has been withdrawn, and it is a matter for the House and the House of Commons in terms of how it then deals with incidents and responds to issues in terms of specific MPs.
But he's still a Conservative member, and he's still an MP who is due to be returning in 2 weeks' time. Do you not think the UK government should be kind of tabling a way to stop that happening?
Well, in terms of issues regarding the whip, that is clearly a matter for the government chief whip. But Mr Roberts has had the whip withdrawn. As such, he's not a Conservative MP, and it's for him to address those issues.